Britt, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
And today we are sharing Britt's story at 49. But before we get started, Britt, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I live in San Francisco, very close to the beach with my 1-year-old daughter, Isadora Hawk. And at this moment, I'm 50 years old.
Did you always want to be a mother?
Yeah, I don't remember a time where I didn't have that desire. I grew up just knowing with great certainty that I would have a child. My husband, who's since passed, when we got together, he would grill me. He's like, "Why do you want a baby so bad?" And so I really had to get to a place where I had to articulate why I wanted a child so badly. I was a birth doula for over 20 years. And I had attended around 500 births and been
Oh,
doing
wow.
birth education, prenatal yoga. I taught prenatal yoga for 22 years and really just so deeply immersed in the world of pregnancy and birth that I just knew that I needed to go through this experience myself.
Yeah. So, how long did it take before you started trying?
We started before we got married.
Oh,
We
nice.
definitely had an unconventional path because I was in my early 40s at the time. He was in his early 50s. And so
Hmm.
we spent a year getting to know each other. And then, pretty much at exactly the 1 year mark of having been together, we moved in and we immediately got pregnant. And so I was in my early 40s and we got pregnant on our first try, which
Wow.
was like absolutely one of those moments that just felt so validating and affirming in every way because I knew that I was healthy and vibrant and fertile. I was living on top of the world and then unfortunately found out that the child had some serious issues and we ended up terminating that pregnancy, which was like totally devastating.
Ugh, I'm
um,
sorry.
yeah, it was a real blow because I was just so proud of my body and so proud of us. And then we got pregnant after I recovered from that. We got pregnant a couple months later
Wow.
and now totally naturally again. And then I miscarried that one.
Oh,
Yeah. But again, we were like, wow, we just keep getting pregnant. Like it's so easy for us to get pregnant. So we just kept like trucking along. And then we went like over a year without getting pregnant. And so then I started to take some medication and started to do more stuff, do more acupuncture, and started to integrate some medical fertility treatments as well as holistic treatments. And we started to do some IUIs both at home with a home birth midwife and at the fertility clinic. It was right around the shutdown in 2020 after everything opened back up for a little bit
mhm.
that we got pregnant with a medicated IUI cycle and miscarried that one too.
Ugh. And how old were you then for a third time?
I was 45.
What
So
were you thinking at that point?
I was pretty devastated.
Mhm.
I knew I had eggs left. There were always follicles whenever I went to the clinic.
Mhm.
I knew that my body could carry a pregnancy, but I had gotten to the point where I didn't really want to endure any more losses. That's when my husband and I started to open up to the idea of using an egg donor.
Mhm.
And that was, and maybe you can relate to this, that took a while. It wasn't just, oh, we lost a pregnancy and now we're definitely just going to go with the egg donor. It wasn't just like an easy decision for us to make. It was a big grief process for
Yeah.
me because I always imagined having a baby that looked like they came from my family. And it was hard to think, oh, now I'm signing myself up for IVF and where are we going to get the eggs? What's the background, the lineage, the history that this child brings into the family? It was a really tough decision. It was a lot of grief. And my husband and I we were just really trusting, and we have a pretty deep spiritual practice. And so we meditated on it. We did some plant medicine ceremonies with it. And we got to this place where I just started to put out feelers and just see if there was anybody in my community, because I have a really big community from
Mhm.
having taught yoga and been a doula for so many years here, that I just knew I knew so many people that had been reproducing. So I was like, maybe somebody I know has some eggs sitting around,
Oh, that would be so interesting.
so it's because it's so expensive to get donor eggs, and we were both not in occupations that made a ton of money. So we were trying to figure out what's a way that we can do this in a way that we can afford it. And
Uh-huh.
so I just started to put my feelers out and did some posts in various groups, shared with friends and family and an extended community that I was looking for an egg donor. And it turned out that in one of my posts, somebody answered and was like, I know this, I have this friend that froze these eggs and she doesn't want them anymore. And it turned out that donor was a friend of several of my friends.
Uh-huh.
And so that was like a really easy yes for my husband and I, because we could meet her. We really resonated with her. She had a similar background. She was Jewish with curly hair, with blue eyes. She was also a yoga teacher and a creative person. So there were like so many pieces that really came together that made us
Yeah.
feel like we could say yes to working with the egg.
Did you want it to be open or semi-open?
She was really open and willing to be an auntie.
Cool.
It felt so good. It felt the stars had aligned
Yeah.
and everything was working in our favor. The sort of the downside was that she had frozen the eggs when she was 35. And she was giving us 8 eggs. As you probably know, that's not great odds. But we were believing that it was so meant to be that it was just going to work out. So we initiated the process and he gave his sperm and we made the embryos, and the outcome wasn't great. We pretty much
Ugh.
we got 3 embryos. 2 made it to day 3, but they didn't think they would make it to day 5 to do the testing. So we just put in the 2 day 3 embryos and it didn't take.
Ugh.
I'm sure so many people can relate to this. It was such a blow. It was so devastating. It was, I would say, just as much, if not more devastating than the like second and third miscarriage,
Yeah.
because we had invested so much in not just financially, but emotionally and
Emotionally.
spiritually and energetically. And we had our whole community praying for us. And we were just like doing all of these rituals, and it was devastating. My husband, he was so involved. Like, I've never known a man that was that involved in a fertility process. We would have a nightly ritual where he'd give me my shots in my butt and gave his whole being to it. When it didn't work out, I was hysterical. But the next day I was like, okay, what's next? And he was like, I need some time. I can't just bounce back from that. That was so devastating for me that he was like, I need to take the summer off. I need some time. I need some space. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, okay, you can take your time. I'm going to do some research and figure out what's next
Right.
so that when you're ready, we can just go. And he
Right.
said, okay, you do whatever you've got to do, but I need space.
Yeah, were you 46 yet or were you still 45?
I was 46 at that time. Yeah. I found a clinic that I liked, that I thought would be a good match for what we wanted to do. They had a pool of egg donors. And so I started to make some phone calls and talk to them and figure out what I wanted to do. Meanwhile, we were taking the summer off. And it just so happened that summer that my husband got sick and passed away. It was obviously the most horrific, traumatic, devastating, like destroying experience of being destroyed that I could have ever imagined.
Sure.
While it was happening, I just thought, at least I'm going to have this baby. Like, the desire to have the baby did not go away through that whole process. And his last words to me were, I want you to have this baby with my frozen sperm. And I want you to show our baby my artwork and my journals. And he really wanted to sustain a way for him to have a connection with the child. I just carried that with me through the time around his passing. And I just kept thinking, okay, life is going to continue. I'm going to continue this life. This is something that we started together that is going to keep going. And it just so happened, because that cycle with the donor eggs didn't work, we just happened to have sperm frozen. It wasn't like we had
Planned
froze
it.
extra sperm or planned anything. It just so happened that there was sperm.
Oh, what an alignment of
Yeah.
all of the stars.
Yeah, it really was. And unfortunately, so a couple months after he died, I was ready to go.
Your desire was just that strong.
6 weeks after he died, I decided that I was going to give myself some time off from work. My community had been really supportive of that. My friends and family had rallied together so that I wouldn't have to stress financially. I enrolled in a coaching program for sex, love, and relationship coaching with a tantric perspective. I started to do really intense, deep spiritual alchemy on myself. I started to really use pleasure as a medicine to heal myself through all of the grief, the trauma, the pain, the suffering that I had experienced. I was in a really deep healing process. I was also doing therapy. I was doing psychedelic therapy. I was completely devoted to my healing in the time after he died. And I had my whole community around me, and everybody was really just holding space for me to get all the care I needed. I had people giving me acupuncture and body work and chiropractic, and I was being really loved up. And so I had the emotional and spiritual space to focus on myself, but also to be really clear that I wanted to live. And it really felt like an inflection point where I had to make a choice that I was going to focus on life and not focus on the death that was behind me, but that on the life that I wanted to live and the life that I wanted to create.
Uh-huh.
So that's what I did. I just devoted all my energy towards life. I contacted the clinic where the sperm was, and I said, I'm ready to start the proceedings for getting pregnant. There had been some mistake in his paperwork, and I ended up having to go to court to get the sperm, which
Oh my
was
gosh.
that's like a whole nother thing. We don't need to
Yeah.
like get
Yeah.
super into that, but let's just say it delayed my process for close to a year. Yeah, it was very expensive and very draining and stressful and time consuming, but I just I really handed it over to Eric. I just said, Eric, if you want this to work, if you really want this baby to be here, I need you to do your magic from wherever you are to help this work out and happen.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting ownership of the sperm, and I had been working with this clinic that I had found that was about 2 hours away from my
Uh-huh.
house.
Let me just say this
Yeah.
first. I'm
Yeah.
so impressed with your work because it's been what, 3 years
He
since
he
he
died
passed?
he died 4 years ago.
4
Yeah.
years ago, and you are just, like, keeping it together, so I am super impressed with the work and the healing that you've done.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had already been doing so much work on myself, and because of all the pregnancy losses, because there had been 3 pregnancy losses and the loss of that IVF cycle, I was so steeped in grief work, and I was already so steeped in all this other spiritual work and the psychedelic work, and so I knew exactly where to go. I knew
Mhm.
exactly what I needed to do to heal myself. And I had seen people do it in my world. I'd seen people come back from the ashes.
Mm.
And I actually knew some widowed mothers. And I tapped into all these sources I was just like, where is inspiration? And I just was looking for inspiration. I was
Mm.
looking for confirmation that this was possible. And I found it. And I think that's a really important piece that I would share with anybody who's on any somewhat of a similar journey is to look for proof that it can happen instead of looking for proof that it can't happen. I had such a clear and strong feeling from all of the work of being a yoga teacher and an embodiment coach. I knew my body was fertile. I knew it. I was so in tune with my womb. And again, I had done so much work to be in tune with my womb. But I was so there in my body that I just knew I could. It was just a matter of lining everything up.
Mm-hmm.
And I trusted that I knew, okay, my eggs, maybe not so good anymore. Maybe the time had run out for my eggs. But I knew if I just got good eggs, that it would all work out. I found a donor through this clinic that was like 2 hours away from my house.
Uh-huh.
And I had friends that lived in the town in Sacramento where the clinic was. So I knew I had a place to stay and emotional support there. In this clinic, all the donors are, I guess they're anonymous. You see their pictures and you read their profiles, but you can't talk to them.
Okay.
I had to let go of that. I mean, I couldn't find anybody that looked remotely like me or had really that much in common with me. But there was like one person that just I had a resonance with
Mm-hmm.
that I could just feel in my body there was a yes. She was young enough that the odds were really good. I went ahead and I did a cycle with her, and I'm really grateful that I found this particular clinic because they do things in a much more economical way and what I thought was a much more ethical way, where when they do the retrieval, they give you all the eggs from that
Mm,
retrieval.
how nice.
Yeah, because some of them they take them and split them into packages and whatnot, and you
Yes.
only get X amount of eggs. I got 16 eggs or thing,
Wow.
and I just appreciated how they held my hand the whole way through and they kept me posted on what was happening with her. I wanted to do one fresh cycle, so I was synced up with her cycle so that I could do one fresh transfer. I had just turned 48
Because
when
getting the sperm took that long.
yeah, we did the fresh embryo transfer.
Mm-hmm.
And because we had so many embryos, we had 7 or 8 embryos. Because that's what happens when you have a 28-year-old donor, right? You
Right.
know? So I was so proud of myself because it's like I did it right this time. I got fresh, young eggs. I got a lot of them. That one took, I was pregnant and was so delighted, but also, as you can imagine, at that point was also just very tentative. And at the 7-week ultrasound, it showed that there was no heartbeat.
Uh,
So I had shown no signs of having had a miscarriage like I had in the other two. I had been bleeding. And this one, there had been no blood.
shock.
Yeah, complete. But it was also like, I don't know where this came from. My mom even tells me how surprised she was. I was like, I got to keep going. I've got all these embryos. Like, we knew that we were taking a chance with a fresh cycle where it was untested. So we were testing 6 other ones.
So you did
And
the PGT, whatever it's called.
yeah, we did the
Yeah.
testing of the embryos. And out of the 6 we tested, there were 5 that were like very high quality. We decided to do a frozen transfer. We ended up needing to wait a while because I ended up getting COVID when we had one embryo transfer scheduled. So it ended up being like 7 months between transfers.
Okay. So a good amount of time.
Hmm. Yeah. I was 48 when we transferred the embryo that is now my daughter.
Oh,
And we did it on January 2nd. We had the New Year's momentum. The night before I did my embryo transfer with my daughter, I did a pleasure practice that's called sex magic, which is a tantric manifestation practice where you use your sexual energy to call all of the energy of the universe to help you realize a desire that you have. You meditate on exactly what you want, and then you have an orgasm focusing on exactly what you want. It's more
Wow.
complicated than that. But I did
Sure.
that the night before I got pregnant.
Now, I
And
have heard a lot of like recommendations to do before the transfer, and I haven't heard that, but I think it's great.
yeah, it is great. And it put me in the right state of mind.
Definitely.
It really put me in this place of believing and being relaxed, being embodied, being connected to my power. So this is
Mhm.
another thing when you drop into your yoni and you heal the shame and the trauma and the fear and the ignorance and all the disconnection, what is revealed is power, is your innate power, is and the same power that is your sexual power, your sensual power, your pleasure power is your birthing power, right? It's all connected. It's
Yeah,
all the same kind of
definitely.
power. And it's your conception power too, right?
Mhm.
And really connecting to that sexual energy. A lot of people conceive their babies through having intercourse, right? I really do believe that I used my sexual energy to get myself pregnant. And prior to that date, I focused all my energy preparing my womb, of choosing the kind of energy I wanted to have in my body, of clearing out the prior pregnancies, the fear, the pain, the grief from the prior pregnancies, moving all that out through my womb and opening myself spiritually to the baby. When you go into a heightened state of pleasure, it's like you go into a psychedelic trance. Ideally, you're having like really good sex, it's trance inducing, right? And
Yeah.
in that trance state, you're more open to rewiring different things into your nervous system. So just like you wire in a bonding experience with someone when you're in that heightened state of pleasure, you can wire in all kinds of things, right? And so that's part of how I got myself to that place, was wiring in all this juicy pleasure stuff and this confidence, this trust, and also this belief that my womb was healthy and vibrant and capable and all of that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that so
Yeah.
much.
Me too.
So did you wait for your blood draw to get the results?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you feel? Because you've had loss before, and here they are saying, Brett, you're pregnant.
Okay. This is what happened. So I was like,
Okay.
okay, let's wait and see.
Okay.
I'm pregnant. Okay, I've been pregnant before. All right, I'm not going to get too attached, all of that.
Mhm.
And then I started feeling really sick.
Uh-huh.
I had felt really sick in my first pregnancy, the one that I carried till 14 weeks before we ended up needing to terminate.
Uh-huh.
I knew that was a good sign.
Mm.
And I also started having remorse. And
Okay.
I just got chills because I haven't talked about this in a while. In all my years of working with pregnant and birthing people, I think I had only maybe talked to one or two people that had remorse about being pregnant. Of course, I've known people that had abortions, but I I didn't ever know anybody that was pregnant and having the baby and was kind of not sure if they really wanted to anymore. And I definitely didn't think that would ever happen to somebody that had been trying to have a baby for over 6 years. I was just shocked. I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if I really want to do this anymore. And I just started having all this fear. And I have an amazing midwife. Her name is Sue. In all the years of working in the field of birth, I have so many friends and colleagues who are midwives and doulas and birth educators and people in that field. I had attended so many births, so I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew I wanted to have a home birth. I knew I wanted to have minimal as possible interaction with the medical system. Right.
Mhm.
And I was like, whatever it takes for me to get pregnant, I'll do it. If I need medical care, I'll take it, but I'd really rather just do everything as naturally as possible. I was only really talking to my home birth midwife. Oh, that was the other thing, is I did go in and after my 7-week ultrasound and everything was perfect,
Mhm.
I still couldn't totally relax. I have a friend that's a midwife at the hospital. Around 10 weeks or so, I got her to give me an ultrasound just to confirm it
Mhm.
again.
Yeah.
That was really helpful. Even being like this super, super duper hippie person who's like, absolutely, I don't want 10, 15 years ago, I would have probably had no ultrasounds in my pregnancies.
Mhm.
Here I am with all these losses, and I'm like, I just need to know that the baby's still alive. And so I had that ultrasound, and I even wanted to have an anatomy scan on the earlier side before 20 weeks because I wanted to just know as much as I could know.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I was like, oh God, I don't know if I really want to be doing this anymore. It was brought up a lot of grief around losing my husband because I felt so alone and I felt so overwhelmed and I felt really crappy, like physically. It was just a lot of emotion. And meanwhile, my blood sugar, I had already struggled with blood sugar before the pregnancy, and my blood sugar was becoming more of a challenge. So I ended up needing to go on insulin. So I had to have more interactions with the medical system so that
Mhm.
I could get a prescription for insulin. I felt very out of sorts and I was really struggling and I was completely exhausted. And yet everything was working out. My midwife said to me, and actually, she wasn't the only one. There were like several midwives that said, because this was the pregnancy where I felt remorse, it was definitely going to be the one that stuck. That
Uh-huh.
that feeling only really happens when you know deep down inside that the baby's going to stay and it's
Yeah.
real. This is really going to happen.
Yeah.
I took solace in that, but I had to be honest, like I was very split in my pregnancy. There was the part of me that was happy to finally be pregnant. I was so excited to finally get to have the experience of being pregnant and get to go to prenatal yoga after having taught prenatal yoga for most of my life. There was so many pieces that I was like happy about. I thought it was so amazing that my belly was growing. And yet I was deep in grief, also just feeling concerned about what it was going to be like to be a single mom. Every time I would go for an ultrasound, which I did a few more times, all this fear would come in from the medical system, and I'd have to go to my doula, who's also a shaman and a hypnotherapist. I'd have to go to her, or I'd have to go to my midwife and have them like undo all the fear that happened every time I went to the hospital. Even though I brought a doula with me every time I went to the hospital, I still got like really wrapped up in all this fear. And my people would bring me back into presence and bring me back into what I know to be true and to bring me back into my body.
Yeah.
And as I pause and just reflect on, that's like another layer of what I am so grateful for in having been a yoga practitioner and a birth educator and somebody that just knows about pregnancy and birth so deeply and has a practice of coming into my body and a practice of meeting my fear and a practice of processing my emotions. I was able to move through it. Every time stuff would come up, I was able to meet the wave of intensity and move through it and then refocus on coming back to this idea that I had this birth that I really wanted in this particular way. And there was no reason. My midwife would just keep saying, I don't see any reason why you can't at least try this. I just kept refocusing and
Yeah.
refocusing again and again on what I wanted.
I love that you brought a doula with you to the appointments, like,
Mhm.
in the medical
Yeah.
areas, because I think I would have brought a sister or a
Mhm.
friend, and I think the doula is gonna recenter you and help you with what you're thinking and feeling. I think that was such a smart thing to do.
Yeah, thank you. That came from years and years of being
Yeah.
a doula. Also, it came from being a single mom and knowing that I needed some support. I needed someone there with me. I needed someone to help me remember which questions to ask. And also, most importantly, I needed somebody to help me set boundaries.
Mhm.
and hold those boundaries. This is something I tell people all the time in preparation for birth. It's you can have your plan, you can have your idea of what you want and what you don't want, what you want to talk about and what you don't want to talk about. And then you get into the moment and they're projecting all this fear into the space, which is usually what happens, particularly when you're over 40. They're just telling you about all the things they think can go wrong. For instance, my amniotic fluid, this was, I think, my last ultrasound, which was 20 something weeks. It was to check the position of the placenta because a prior ultrasound had showed that I had a placenta previa. And so I had prayed on it and done acupuncture on it and whatever I felt like I could do, I did. I took homeopathy. I did whatever I could do to help my placenta move, even though I knew it probably would anyway. And so we went to get a confirmation at the end of my second trimester that the placenta had moved. And they were like, "Oh, your amniotic fluid is on the high end of normal." And I was like, "That's great. You said it's in the range, it's in the normal range." And they're like, "It's the high end of normal. So you need to come in at this point, all these other
Of
points."
course. Yeah.
And it stops you in your tracks. So they're like, you could have more preterm labor. Oh, because I also had, so I had I was high risk 4 times. I was old. I had gestational diabetes and was being medicated for it. I had rather large fibroids and I had done IVF. Okay. So
Uh-huh.
in their mind, I was very high risk in their mind.
Yeah,
And yet
and
my
they
midwife,
wanted to see you all the
yeah, they
time.
wanted to see me all the time, and it never felt good. There was never actually a problem. I carried my pregnancy to 42 weeks and 3 days.
Oh,
I exercised, I had a really good diet, I managed my blood sugar, my baby was like 7.5 pounds, totally took care of myself in every regard. I didn't get preeclampsia. I did all the vitamins and nutrition to try to avoid getting preeclampsia. I took amazing care of myself and I had amazing health care from my midwives and a couple check-ins from the medical establishment where needed. I pretty much stopped talking to them at the end of my second trimester and I just refilled my prescription for the insulin. I monitored my insulin myself and brought it up when my numbers went up and I really did everything myself. I just managed it and I'd talk about it with my midwife. And we just kept assessing that I was totally and completely healthy. And my baby was totally and completely healthy.
mhm.
I was measuring a month bigger than I was because of my fibroids.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and because my fibroids were so big, my midwife could barely ever feel exactly the position that my baby was in. And at some point, we determined that the baby was breech. So I was like, I can't deal with one more thing that I have to think about. And in California, vaginal breech birth is not supported at home legally. I knew that it would be really complicated if I had a breech baby. So I did all the things to try to turn her so that I didn't know the sex of my baby and I didn't want to know.
Oh, that's
Um,
what I was gonna ask. You didn't
yeah,
find out your embryos.
I told them to surprise me and just pick whatever one was looked the best. They knew because they did the genetic testing, but
Mhm.
I did not want to know. I wanted to bring them in with as clean of a slate as possible.
Right, later.
Put upon them later. Yeah, I didn't really feel that much of a connection with the baby in the pregnancy. I felt her moving a lot, but I was like, "Okay, you're here. I'm here. I hope you're good. I hope it all goes well. Here's my vision. Here's what I want." But I couldn't completely bond with the baby, and that was thankfully really normalized by all the people who were supporting me, and they understood why after all the
Mhm.
losses and all the negativity and everything. So I was like, "You know what? I'll be excited when I'm holding a baby."
I was the same way. I knew his sex, and I think that helped me bond with him a
Yeah.
little bit, but I totally the same way. I struggled with, like, bonding and really believing he was gonna be
Mhm.
here in a few
Mhm.
months.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of cognitive dissonance for me. I was just like, "We'll see if I have a baby at the end of this," and everyone's, "Britt, you're definitely gonna have a baby at the end of this." I'm like, "I don't know. A lot of things could happen." It's just again, there was like these 2 parts of me. There was the part of me that's, "I'm healthy. There's no reason to expect my baby's gonna die." I didn't
Yeah.
have any particular fear of the death of my baby, but I also knew that I had a higher risk for stillbirth. And especially as I was getting closer and closer, my midwife jokingly was like, any obstetrician in the country would induce you by 39 weeks. Yep,
Mhm.
I know that. And we'd check in every couple days as I got closer. And I didn't have a really clear message internally that I should do anything any differently.
Mhm.
So we just kept going and
Mhm.
going. And
How did you prepare for her? 'Cause you obviously didn't need any classes.
okay, thank you for asking because this is a really important piece. So, during my pregnancy, I recorded a course that I had been teaching for 5 years already. It's a birth preparation course. It's called Preparing Your Vagina for Birth. And it's an embodied birth preparation course that centers around connecting with what I like to call your yoni or your pussy. I actually don't love the word vagina because it has nasty patriarchal roots. So I created this course about really getting attuned to that part of your body instead of it being this part of the body that we don't talk about, we don't really address. We talk about like perineal massage a little bit, and everybody's afraid of tearing or not being stretchy enough. Yet, like, none of the birth preparation courses talk anything about this. My view is actually let's like flip that. Let's center birth around the opening. Let's talk more, let's talk completely about the part of you that is going to open and practice being inside of that part of you. Practice really embodying, feeling, sensing, understanding, getting to know, familiarizing yourself with that part of you. And using the pleasure that's available in that part of you to elevate your experience, to relieve your stress, to get high on the feel good hormones, to relax your body, to start to prepare for managing the sensations of birth. So, my entire pregnancy was focused on creating this course. And so that meant that I literally did the whole course. Like I immersed myself in the curriculum that I had been teaching. And this is really like a culmination of my life's work, right? I gave birth in 2024 and I had started birth work in 2000. It was 24 years of teaching yoga, hypnobirthing, work with partners and family members, work around sexuality and embodiment, all these years of this work and witnessing birth.
Yeah.
What I noticed in witnessing birth is that the births that went the smoothest were often the births where people were the most embodied and at ease in their sexuality. The people that were more free in their bodies, the people that just were open, could talk about their sexuality and continued to be engaged with their sexuality throughout the pregnancy. Every birth that I saw that I liked, that I wanted for myself, I should say, every single one of the births that I wanted for myself, the people had a particular kind of relationship with their genitals that was different. And
Fascinating.
the births that were the hardest to be a witness for were people that had trauma that had not been resolved completely. I don't want to say completely, but hadn't been resolved in the context of birth.
Mhm.
When I saw traumatic births, when I saw really challenging births, it was people that like really, and not to say across the board, always and ever, because nothing is always and never, but a lot of those births had these threads of I can't be in that part of my body. I can't soften. I can't relax. I can't open. I can't feel sensation. I can't be with that part of me. That was like a common thread that I would see. So my pregnancy was at least one orgasm a day. My pregnancy was full of pleasure practices, as I call them. My pregnancy was really about connecting with my yoni on a very deep level, like communing, like thinking of that part of the body as like a temple
Mhm.
and worshiping at that temple, praying at that temple, going into that temple every single day.
Yeah, because this
And
is a portal for your baby to
exactly.
enter the world, yeah.
Exactly, right? And so you wanna think about what's in that portal.
Mm,
Is there shame in that portal? Is there ignorance in that portal? Is there fear in that portal? Is there other people's stories? Most of us live with this experience of other people defining that part of our bodies,
yeah.
and us thinking this is a really key piece, us thinking that part of our body is for somebody else,
Mm,
right?
that's good.
And so the work that I offer here is to really experience that place inside of you as yours first. It's for you before it's for anybody else. And then you get to decide how you embody that place. If it was a room in your house, how you decorate it, right? What kind of
Mm,
vibe you want to have. Like I literally in the course, it is practice based. Some of it's me giving lectures and talks, but the meat of it is all these practices, audio practices, as well as like yoga practices that you see in video. But there's one practice that's all about meditating on, visualizing on what is the energy that you want surrounding your baby in that part of your body when they're coming through? What is the message that you want your baby to get as they touch those tissues? If those tissues were talking to your baby, what would those tissues be saying? So that's what I did my whole pregnancy.
like you
Is
practiced your whole course.
Yeah, and that is what was like the remedy for all the discomfort, for all the fear, for all the grief, for all the struggle that I was feeling. That was how I found equilibrium. Like even
Mhm.
in my first try, I was nauseous up until 30 weeks. Yeah,
Long time.
it was a long time. And then I had like super, super intense reflux.
The reflex is terrible.
I either was feeling like I was gonna throw up or I was feeling like I already threw up in my mouth.
Yeah.
Both were it was either one or the other or both. But literally having orgasms was the only thing that made me feel better a lot of the time. Going for walks, I would do cold plunges in the ocean. That was really helpful. But mostly it was pleasure that helped me get through the pregnancy, that helped me meet the fear.
Now, can we get to the end of your pregnancy? Because I went over 41 weeks and it was so stressful. Was that the case for you?
Extremely.
Okay.
So because I had all these big fibroids and because I had all this fluid, I was convinced that I was going to have the baby before 40 weeks. So naive, even this is completely a testament to even if you have 20 plus years of experience in birth, you still need to have a doula and experienced people around you to ground you because everybody's, oh, yeah, sure, Britt, you think you know when the baby is going to come.
I was the same way. I was like, there's
Yeah.
no way I'm getting to 40 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. So my baby was due on September 20th. The anniversary of my husband's death was September 25th.
Wow.
So
Close.
my baby was due during what I call the death portal. In retrospect, I'm like, did I even think about this when I chose to have my transfer on January 2nd? I knew this was the case, but there was part of me that was like, oh, it'll be good. It'll be like new life happening in the ground of death. It was an initiation, to say the least. It was very intense. I was really on my knees crying a lot because I had all this pressure. It was like, I was just feeling so deeply the loss of my husband, and then at the same time knowing that because I was going past 40 weeks, the risks were going up and all of that. But I kept doing my pleasure practices and resourcing myself that way. I live walking distance to the beach, so I was going to the beach every day and getting in the water. I went on maternity leave at 37 weeks, which is something I usually recommend going on maternity leave 36, 37 weeks so that you can clear your space emotionally, spiritually, physically, in all the ways. I did that. And so I was just in a deep place of like prayer and surrender and fear and orgasmic bliss. It was like a mishmash of a lot of things, but it was really hard. It was really hard. We did 3 rounds of castor oil to try to get the labor started, which for anybody that doesn't know this, castor oil is really like the strongest home remedy for initiating labor. It's the midwives would use it like instead of using Pitocin. And pretty much what it does is it initiates like a food poisoning experience where your bowels get moving so much that it irritates your uterus and it makes your uterus contract, and then eventually it can put you into labor.
Mhm.
And
How far along were you whenever you did this?
we did 2 rounds in my 40th week,
Okay.
a couple days apart. And then we did the last round, maybe like 41 and a half.
Did you
Yeah.
think the last one helped at all?
No, nothing helped. At 41 and a half weeks, we went in to get antenatal testing. So that was the first time I'd been at the hospital in like over 10 weeks. And I switched hospitals. I went to a hospital in Marin County that has like a much different philosophy than the hospital that I had been going to. They're very supportive of what I was doing, and they really embraced me and my doula and my midwife and put no pressure on me. But my cervix was like tight and closed. They were trying to sweep my membranes and they couldn't get in there to do that. I don't know what the castor oil did for me, but it definitely wore me out. It was really important to me to feel like I did everything I possibly could to have the
Mhm.
experience that I wanted.
Yes.
And so I wasn't afraid of castor oil because I had seen so many people do it. I was more concerned about an induction in the hospital. So I was like, if I'm going to eventually do an induction in the hospital, I want to know that I brought everything to the table.
Yeah.
I also did homeopathy. I did herbs. I was, of course, having orgasms every day and doing all my prenatal yoga, going to the chiropractor, going to acupuncture, you name it, I did everything to try to get my labor started. At some point, I was like, I'm not in control of this. My midwife can no longer attend my birth at home at 42 weeks. So that will be the point at which I choose to go to the hospital. It was a very deep ceremony for me at that time. It was the thing that I can liken it to the most was an ayahuasca ceremony, which for those that don't know what that's, it's like you're meeting God and you're feeling all of your pain, but you're also in the presence of God and feeling the blessing and support of God as you feel the most grueling pain of your life in an effort to release yourself from that pain, to go through that pain, to come out on the other side, to feel like you are not a slave to that pain or not imprisoned by that pain, but instead you can liberate yourself from that pain.
Uh-huh.
That was what the last week of my pregnancy felt like.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is really intense.
it was so intense. We ended up going into the hospital 42 weeks and chose to have an induction. I'll give you just the brief overview of what happened,
Uh-huh.
which is that we did all the options for induction and nothing changed. They opened my cervix with the Foley balloon and it got open enough so that they could do Pitocin. But every time they started Pitocin, my daughter's heart rate would crash.
Oh,
And my uterus was contracting in a really unusual way, which was a result of the fibroids. Like the fibroids were preventing my uterus from having like really smooth, like coordinated surges or contractions. So it
uh-huh.
wasn't functioning properly. I could really feel that. And the whole labor, I just kept, once like things kicked in, I mean, at first I was like dancing and I was laughing and I was taking showers and in the tub and I was doing the whole like natural birth thing. And then as soon as things got really intense, I just kept saying, I think there's something wrong. And everyone's, no, nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. It's just that your baby doesn't like Pitocin. I'm like, no, I really feel like something is wrong. And after 2 days of trying all the things to try to get my body to open, and I wasn't opening partly because they couldn't turn up the Pitocin because every time they turned it on, her heart rate would crash. So there were no options. We ran out of
Mhm.
options. And I had been at birth and I was getting no pressure from the staff because we had chosen the best hospital you could possibly go to in the Bay Area for this. I was surrounded by my whole team of friends, doulas, midwives. We had an altar, we had affirmations all over the room and roses and all the good stuff. I said to my midwife, I said, I don't think this is going to happen. Something's not right. And I don't want to be wheeled down the hall in an emergency. I do not want this to become a dramatic, catastrophic experience. I see the writings on the wall. If you can't give me more Pitocin and I'm not opening without it, I'm not going to open. I
Mhm.
chose to go have a cesarean, which was probably the most devastating like choice I've ever had to make in my life, next to taking my husband off of life support. It was just like, it just was a complete obliteration of my ego and everything I had ever wanted. It was like all just crashing down. Right. So again,
Yeah.
having to experience that same pain of losing everything I had ever wanted.
Mhm. Don't you think all that work of healing also helped you make that decision?
I knew I could get through it. Yeah. In the moment, what helped me make that decision was all of the years of having witnessed births and knowing that there was no other option, like that I could
Mm.
just sit around and wait and get an infection and have a whole bunch of drama and be
Ah,
separated from my baby. It was very practical, honestly. Like my mind was in such a practical place. It was just like, this isn't working. I don't want one of those scenarios where we wait so long that the baby's compromised. Like my baby was fine as long as we didn't use Pitocin. I didn't want to be separated. I didn't want my baby to go to the NICU.
mhm.
And I knew that this was my best chance at staying with my baby. And I think I knew myself as a resilient person. In answer to your question, I knew that I could get through anything because I had already been literally through death and hell. So I did know that I could heal from that. But I also was just right at that moment was just absolutely devastated. I'll be totally honest. Like I did not really feel happy when my daughter was born. I was relieved, but I didn't feel like bonded. I didn't
Mm.
feel euphoric. I'd already been through like 2 days of every drug they could give you in the hospital and all the things that I had been teaching and practicing and all of that. And there I was. It was really devastating. And I just felt so deeply disappointed and also just physically horrible.
I
But
also felt shame when I didn't bond
yeah,
with my baby immediately
yeah.
too.
I didn't feel shame. I understand why you did. And because I knew that happened. And so I had the perspective again of having been at so many births that I had heard other people say they weren't bonded to their babies initially.
Okay.
So I believed that I would one day. I just trusted that I would one day.
I like
And I just like hung my hat on that. I was like, one day I'm going to love this baby. And until then, I just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other and heal myself. What ended up happening was my daughter was so tangled up in her cord that she literally couldn't move. And she
Oh.
had been in that position for 5 weeks.
Oh,
Like we had been
wow.
trying to get her to engage in the pelvis and she never engaged prenatally. She never moved in the whole labor. She moved like a tiny bit down, but she literally never moved. in 5 weeks with all the things that I did. And I had this like sinking feeling at the end of the pregnancy of like, why isn't the baby moving? Why isn't the baby coming down? There must be something going on if the baby isn't moving.
Mhm.
When she was born, I felt vindicated because
Mhm.
they were like, there was no way this baby was going to come out. And everyone in the room was like, there was literally no slack on the cord. She had no choice. It was tangled 3 times tightly around her neck,
Poor
and
thing.
she had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I felt a little bit of relief in knowing that it really didn't have anything to do with what I did or what I didn't do,
Mhm.
that it just was a chance experience that she was tangled up like that. That was helpful in my healing. It took a while to feel bonded. It took a while to recover from that experience. The breastfeeding was really hard. And I think that was one thing that nobody warned me about. Every medical professional I talked to warned me about how risky the pregnancy would be, but nobody told me that I might have trouble like producing enough breast milk.
Uh-huh. Tell us
Um,
about that.
Yeah, after the fact, my midwives were like, "Yeah, it's not abnormal that like when people are older and they're already in perimenopause that like the hormones are such that you don't like or especially if you do IVF, like that the hormones don't exactly support breastfeeding." And so, yeah, it was just a real struggle. It was a real struggle to get the milk flowing. I have inverted flat nipples, so it was very hard to get her to latch. I was meeting with a lactation consultant constantly, which was amazing and very supportive. But I ended up sourcing donor milk from my community, from just getting it straight from moms in the community. And
That's great.
to this day, she still gets donor milk. And I pumped several times a day up until her first birthday. I gave her every last drop I could possibly give her and felt really good about my pumping journey. But we transitioned to exclusively pumping and bottle feeding pretty early, a few months into her life. There was a lot of grief in that and a lot of
Mhm.
disappointment and suffering in that part of the journey too. As if it wasn't hard enough, but I felt really good about giving her all the milk I could from my own body, and now so happy that she continues to get breast milk from other mamas and now can drink cow's milk too. But yeah, that was a whole nother thing that I really wasn't prepared for.
Sure.
Yeah.
How was your recovery from your C-section?
Initially, I was shocked at how like destroyed I felt after the birth. I pretty much had 24/7 support for many weeks after she was born. I had night doulas. Luckily, family and friends in my community again banded together to make a spreadsheet and get me as much support as possible. My parents stayed for 10 days after she was born and helped me out. Yeah, it was really hard. It was a really hard recovery, but I recovered really well. In the first few weeks, like walking around the block was almost impossible. But by the time I got to yoga and Pilates at 8 weeks, I was amazed at how my body was bouncing back. And yeah, my scar healed really beautifully. I've been taking exquisite care of it and I've been doing a lot of work on the scar. The scar itself is on its way in a good way. Everyone that knows something about scars looks at it and says it looks great. I do cupping on it and I get acupuncture on it regularly and like manual scar
Mhm.
work. But I feel like my body is strong and capable. I wear my baby everywhere. I exercise a lot. I take her to ecstatic dance and wear her on my back and we dance for at least an hour or two every
Oh, good.
weekend.
Now, did you decide to do anything with the placenta?
Yeah, I did. I ended up at the very end of my labor having an infection and I had a lot of meconium. And mostly because of the infection, I decided not to consume my placenta. So it's still in my doula's freezer. And we have a date to make some art out of it. And then I'm definitely going to bury it. I have a friend who has a piece of land where I'm going to bury it. But yeah, it's definitely going to be made into, and we're going to do some prints with it. But I haven't had the capacity to really even think about my placenta in this first year of single parenting, but
Yeah.
we will do something with it for sure.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And mentally, how were you during postpartum?
It was mixed. I would say that I felt really loved. I felt really grateful that we were both healthy and safe. I was very afraid to be alone for the first couple of months. And it just was so overwhelming to be taking care of a newborn by myself. I was living on my own for the first 2.5 months and would have a lot of help. But that was like my main maternity leave. And then I went and stayed with my parents for from 2.5 to 3.5 months. And so I had more support there and got a night doula there. I would say that it was like up and down. I never felt like I had postpartum depression until about 5 months. And at 5 months, I hit a wall where the sleep deprivation really accumulated.
Mm.
And my daughter was needing a lot of help getting to sleep. And she was waking up every hour and a half to 2 hours.
Oh.
Unless I had a night doula, I wasn't really getting like solid sleep and I had to work. So that's when I did sleep training. And I absolutely bow at the feet of the sleep consultant that I worked with who helped me teach my baby how to sleep. And the sleep training worked in 3 days. She went from feeding 3 or 4 or more times a night and needing incessant bouncing and all the things, needing just pretty much needing me to make her sleep, to just being put down, like just put down and then waking up only once and sleeping for 12 hours. And so that was like a big game changer. And immediately my mental health cleared and I
Mhm.
felt so much better. But I realized that maybe like from 4 to 5 months, I had gone into a pretty dark place.
Yeah.
Yeah. And getting sleep pretty much was the game changer for that for me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about bonding with her?
I had been gradually bonding to her over that first 5 months.
Mhm.
But as soon as she started sleeping through the night and didn't need me to make her sleep, I bonded to her instantly. And I
Mhm.
like fell in love on this whole other level. It was a little bit of an adversarial relationship, or there was some like resentment towards her before the sleep training, to be fully honest. After the sleep training, I got that feeling that you hear women talk about, just being so deeply in love with their babies. That was when it kicked in for me. And
Mhm.
now it's just amplifies exponentially like every month that goes by. And just to be with this just totally vibrant, fun, intelligent, curious person and to share my life with her, it's such a blessing and a gift, but it took a while to get to
Mhm.
that place where I really felt that.
Is there anything else you wanna mention about your pregnancy or birth?
I'm really glad I did it. A lot of people are like, "Why don't you just adopt?" And I think a lot of people that have had fertility struggles know that just adopting isn't a just. It's a quite an ordeal and it is also expensive.
Mhm.
But I felt like I really wanted to experience pregnancy and birth and breastfeeding. And though none of it went how I wanted it to go, I am so grateful that I did it, and I'm so grateful that I had all of the tools, all the resources, and all of the support that I had. An
Mhm.
incredible team of perinatal professionals that were surrounding me from the conception through the pregnancy, through the birth, through the postpartum time, and even into now. I'm just really such a big fan of calling in your village, and it's a little overplayed, that term, but I think people people are talking about it a lot more now for a good reason. And I think that we all deserve to receive as much support as we possibly can. And I'm really glad to be a part of that network for a lot of people. The work that I do with pregnancy and now with a lot of postpartum people, because now, of course, I'm a birth integration specialist after having done all the work that I've done all these years and then gone through the portal myself in my coaching practice. Now, a lot of my work happens to be around helping people integrate their experience. And so I feel grateful to be able to support people. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, you have quite a few embryos left.
Yeah.
What are your plans for that?
That's complicated because of the court case. They won't let me give them to someone else.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm saving them, praying that I'll come up with a solution to that because I actually have a friend that I would give them to or would want to give them to someone else. But
Mhm.
yeah, right now they're on ice and I'm praying that they get to be gestated, but we'll see.
Oh, I love that idea of just finding someone.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really neat.
Yeah, me too. I would love that. I
Kinda
would love my daughter to be able to have a genetic sibling.
yeah, and passing it what do they say? Moving it forward or passing it forward, whatever that
Yeah,
terminology is.
paying it forward. Feels like it'd
Yeah.
be like paying it backwards because I already paid all the money and all the effort and energy. But yeah, I would hate for them to go to waste. So
Mm,
I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen with them.
yeah.
Yeah.
What has been your biggest challenge being pregnant over 40?
It's hard to say because I don't know what being pregnant under 40 would have been like.
Mhm,
There were so many factors in this pregnancy that is hard to pin on how much of it had to do with my age.
mhm.
I have noticed that as I've aged, I've had less energy. I'm still a pretty energetic person, but I do notice that I have less energy. So maybe being pregnant over 40 was harder because I was really freaking exhausted. But I think I know that happens to people under 40 too. I feel like the benefit of being over 40 is that I have a lot of life experience and wisdom and perspective. And I just had so much clarity that I wanted this as badly as I did. So I was really motivated.
You
And
were.
yeah, like extremely motivated. And I don't know if I would have felt that way had I been any younger. So I just had this like conviction that I was really clear about following, and I had the resources to support myself, all the spiritual and energetic resources and emotional resources. So I'm just grateful that I had all of that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd recommend that would help prepare someone for pregnancy and birth?
Yeah, I think having conscious support. Like one of the things that I do a lot of now is coaching people through the whole process and helping people make decisions. That's always what I've done as a doula. I would say hire a doula, hire midwives, hire people that want what you want and help you understand what your options are and what's actually true and what's actually just speculation and fear-based thinking that's based on fear of litigation, which is how most of the medical system works. So I would say hire people to support you that aren't emotionally involved in your experience in terms of them being like your family members. Like I don't think their mother or your sister exactly can be the doula that you need because they have emotional investment in the process. And so I think having a third party, somebody outside of that immediate orbit, can be really helpful in navigating all the decisions that have to get made, especially when you're over 40, because they're going to pathologize the hell out of you. And then
Mhm.
a lot of people make decisions that are based on fear. And I can tell you from 25 years of experience of working with pregnant and birthing people that people often regret decisions they make out of fear.
Mhm.
And people feel good about decisions that they make out of having all of the information and being the one that gets to decide what happens. And that's how I feel about my experience. And I've seen that people in with whatever outcome occurs, that people feel better when they feel like they were an active participant in the decision making process.
I love that. I had a doula, and I think they're amazing
Mhm.
support, and
Yeah,
it's a third party.
yeah, yeah.
And what advice would you give yourself when you were pregnant if you could go back?
I don't think I would do anything any differently. That's the thing, that when I was so devastated after Izzy was born, I looked back and I said, I feel really good about every single decision that I made, every practice that I did. And it affirmed everything I had been teaching all these years. Like, I did everything I would advise my clients to do. And in the end, I'm so glad I did all those things that I had been telling other people to do all this time. So I don't regret a single decision, or I don't think I would do anything any differently. So I don't think there would be any advice, because I think she did a great job.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Your journey was 6 years. There's a lot of listeners that are trying to conceive over 40. What would you say to those ladies?
I would say trust yourself and get inside your body as much as possible. Like, to really attune with your body, to get to know your body intimately, to get to know your yoni and your womb intimately, to really live your experience and make your decisions based on how it feels in your body, and not just do everything like from your head or get focused on what other people think you should do, but do what feels right to you from the vantage point of embodiment.
Mhm.
And if you don't know what that is, you can talk to me, or you can find another embodiment coach or educator to help you figure out like how to actually get there.
That's perfect. And speaking of, please tell us about your birth course.
Yeah. So it's called Preparing Your Vagina for Birth. And the focus is on helping you feel more confident, prepared, and excited to give birth.
Mhm.
And it's a somatic approach to birth preparation. So we use breathing, relaxation, visualization, yoga, and other embodiment practices to help you, again, get into your body and enjoy your pregnancy as much as you can, and connect with your baby as much as you can, and really feel like you're making empowered choices. I would do it all over again if it was me. And yeah, you can find it at prepyourvforbirth.com. But also you'll have an affiliate code, and so you can share that in the show notes. And
Awesome.
yeah.
Would you like to share where listeners can connect with you?
Yeah, you can just go to brittfohrman.com, BrittFohrman.com, or you can find me on Instagram at the Juicy Ladies on Instagram, or thejuicyladies.com. Either way. Yeah.
Awesome. Britt, I knew your story was going to be amazing. I didn't know how amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here with you, Jamie.